Well, it's 24 degrees Celsius in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily, your daily dose of sunshine. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf. I understand my colleagues did not want to come to work in Lagos because it rained all night. But thankfully, Ayo is here.
Well, I don't know what colleague you're talking about, but this one is here. And of course, I can also tell you this, Maupe. For the first time in maybe forever, the weather in Abuja is the same as the weather in Lagos. It's 24 degrees in Lagos as well. So, good morning and welcome. Let's just note it. Today is September 16, 2025. The weather in Abuja is the same as the weather in Lagos today. So, when you write today in history, this should be one of them. So, my apologies, Mark. There's just one countdown, 2 days away from September 18. Rivers. I don't know if that's one of the things that's giving us any tickles now, particularly because the president also had to cut his trip short.
Well, who knows? I mean, quite a lot of things he has to respond to politically, but perhaps that will be one of those issues that has made him cut short his leave. We understand that he should be back in the country today, and I'm sure Ayo will see that welcoming party, as we normally see, the farewell party and the welcoming party making their way to the airport to welcome Mr. President. We certainly will see if there will be any formal speeches or any formal handover. We do not know, but we'll wait and see for that. In the meantime, for majority of Nigerians, or for a lot of Nigerians, when it rains, people look forward to the rains. Farmers look forward to the rains. Even I look forward to the rains. The rainy season is one of my favorite seasons. As a matter of fact, it's my favorite season of the year. And I never understand Nigerians who say, oh, we're going abroad for summer because it's, the children are on holidays. I never get it. I mean, there is enough sun all year to last you in Nigeria. And when the rains come, it's the one time you can really, really chill. But even that now, it would seem to be a luxury for many people, enjoying the rains and what the goodness that it brings with it when it comes to water the earth. It does appear that a lot of people, when the rainy season comes, they are apprehensive because all of the flood warnings that are usually issued by NIMET and also the Hydrological Agency of Nigeria sometimes gives quite a number of people palpitation, especially those who are living in low-lying areas, sometimes those who are close to river banks, those whose areas are usually prone to flooding. Those people do not find the rainy season funny at all. And I think that we need to do more than prep people for the rainy season. I guess there also needs to be some preparations. Some people will say, well, maybe this is a little late now, given the fact that, well, we're supposed to be winding down. We're in September as we speak. And usually the rains in Nigeria last from between April to October, so we're told. But sometimes we find out that towards when the rainy season is just about to start wrapping up, we now see an increase in rainfall. So much so that during the middle of this rainy season, NIMET has had to issue another flood alert to say, look, states, you need to be on the lookout. It might not have happened all of the rainy season, but this is the time now when we now have to really look out because the rains might be heavier and areas prone to flooding might now begin to see this flood. So I do not know if you have seen any areas around Lagos or around Ogun State, which we know usually experience flooding around this particular period. But I think that's a report that was done by our correspondent, Kelly Egiga, who went around to those areas. Some of those areas are usually prone to flooding to see what preparations that they have made. But this year, it does appear that some of the areas in Lagos have been quiet. What exactly has happened?
Well, the only thing that I can say is gratitude, perhaps because Lagos State has been kind of, should I use the word proactive? You know, with all of the actions taken by the Ministry of the Environment in Lagos, making sure that infrastructure erected on floodplains were taken out and all of that, one of those issues right there. But I'm not sure how much or how far Ogun State has gone in that regard, Even though, of course, one can say that the Ogun State government has indeed taken its own actions as well, one of which is a call by the government to the communities adjoining the Ogun, Iju, Owa, and Yemule rivers, like the Sherry, Warewa, Akute, parts of Abeokuta, Ayetoro, Iju, and those areas around the coastline, Makon, Iwokwe, Gelefara, a number of other areas like that, that they need to relocate to a safer environment. Question in my head is where? I'm not sure we have that culture of moving from one place to the other, particularly when it rains. But there is no doubt, Malpe, that the devastating consequences of rainfall is a staggering reality in our faces. So it is now up to us ourselves to take proactive action. Just as you said, the authorities in charge of our weather, outlook and all of that, the NIMET and the Hydrological Agency have gone all year, from time to time, releasing data and letting us know that these areas are vulnerable, those areas are vulnerable. Now, this is just rainfall, Malkwe. You know that in the latter part of the year, there is usually that water release in some areas. Now, whether now that the rains, right, are falling low, I mean, closer to the end of the year than ever before, because usually at this time, when I was growing up, by now it's Harmattan season, but now it is still rainfall. The rains are still pouring and all. So when the dams are going to be released, that's another conversation we're going to have altogether. So perhaps it's a good advice for any environment, any community, particularly the rural or suburban communities that usually experience these heavy rains or heavy flooding, vulnerable to flooding as a result of either the rains or the release of the dams. This is a good time for us to advise ourselves. The days of, I don't know if the days are still here, when the town criers go around with gongs. If they still happen in some communities, by all means, let us do that, because it is better to be safe than to be sorry. Now, there are a number of other conversations to have this morning. It's a good place, actually, to start with our guest here in Lagos, who is the lecturer in the Department of Employment Relations and Human Resource Management. Well, we're talking about resource, so maybe I should ask him that one as well. Professor Chris Obisi is here with us from the University of Lagos. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
From time to time, just a quick one on that one. I don't know if you can speak to it, particularly because we are essentially talking about nation building as we ebb towards the independence of the country. This whole talk about rains falling and governments at various states advising their people to move from the vulnerable areas of flooding to uphill, if I can use the term. How feasible do you see that?
Nigeria is supposed to be a developed country by now. Unfortunately, when we are not doing what we're supposed to do, this is what is bound to happen. If every Nigerian will sit up and do what is expected of him or her, there won't be any problem. We are aware that rainy season is coming. What did we do? Why are we not prepared? Why are we not taking action? Unfortunately, inaction has brought us to where we are. So that's the problem with the country. Unless we start taking proactive action, thinking global, acting local, taking action, by next year, the same thing will continue to happen.
Unfortunately, you're right.
So that's the tragedy of Nigeria and Africa.
Is this a government issue or a people issue for you?
It is a government issue, people issue, Nigerian issue, African issue. We're all in the game. We are blaming everyone. We are blaming the citizens. We are blaming the government. That's the truth.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I'd like to discuss with you is homegrown solutions. There is always a way that some of these things ought to be addressed. Whether or not we are looking at it, it's another thing altogether. Now that we are talking about people, the first issue I'd like to raise with you is human capital development. A number of people have raised issues with the quality of content that is used or impacted into students, particularly in universities, even from the nursery, primary, and secondary schools into the universities. As a lecturer, what can you say about the quality of students that come into the universities? Let's start from there, because it's garbage in, garbage out, so to say. So if the students from universities do not have the kind of their minds ready for what they're going to be receiving in the universities, then how is it going to go? So speak to us about that quality, first of all.
We hear people say that a standard is falling in Nigerian universities, in Nigerian schools. Standard is not falling. The standard is not falling. What is happening is that we don't have the right infrastructure. The standard is there. It's for all the stakeholders to play their own game, to play their own part. Students should be equipped, universities should be equipped, schools should be equipped, stakeholders should do what they are supposed to do. If we do our own bit, everyone does his or her own bit, we won't have the problem we are having. If you go to many universities, many schools, particularly now that parents are paying school fees, particularly now that these children are resuming, what infrastructure have we put in place? The government is trying in terms of providing some facilities, but it is not enough. So like you said, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't invest, if you don't sow, you cannot reap. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, we are fond of trying to reap where we have not sown, and we tend to go back to square one. So that's the issue.
Is that a problem? Is this issue that you're raising now, is it a function of the quality of the curriculum, the academic curriculum that we use in the universities, I beg your pardon, in the secondary schools, that does not adequately prepare students for the university?
The government is working on that ground. Just about 2-3 weeks ago, an updated, revised curriculum came out. And when you go through those curriculum, you can see that the government have tried to streamline the courses. Previously, you see school age, secondary school, doing 15 courses, 17 courses. That's too big. That come down to 9 courses. And that's what they should do. Because you are bombarding these children with what they are not supposed to do. So that streamlining the curriculum is good. The current curriculum is effective if properly administered, if properly managed. So
how about the universities themselves?
Yes.
We have heard a minister in this country say that the quality of graduates we produce in our universities are not employable. A minister of education at the time, a minister of employment, said that many of the graduates that are produced from our ivory towers are not employable. That was some 5 years ago or thereabout. What's your response to that?
I think that's 5 years ago. There is something we call BMAS in the university system, whereby the curriculum are being updated. Many courses are being phased out in the universities as we speak today. So that BMAS curriculum is up to date. The problem we are having in the university system is that the funding is not enough. We have talented, mobile, skillful teachers in the system. The students need to blend theory with practice, like entrepreneurship, and that's what the new curriculum is also coming about. In foreign universities like Stanford, like Harvard, that's what we are trying to do in the University of Lagos now, that before you graduate from the University of Lagos now, you must have developed a product. You must have developed a service as part of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is now compulsory in many universities, particularly in the University of Lagos. So 5 years ago is in the past, but today we are doing the right thing.
It's a function of the system,
yes.
Prof, and which is the issue that I'm raising here now.
Yes.
It's a function of whether or not the curriculum that raises the students,
yes,
prepares them for the future.
Yes.
Thankfully, you said that there is an upgrade now.
Yes.
We're hoping that the curriculum aligns with the education policy,
yes,
to produce substantial citizens and human capital development that the country needs in the
yes,
future.
Yes.
So it's a function of whether or not that alignment is there, Prof.
Yes, yes. Actually, the truth, the main problem is also that the town and gown system, whereby we carry out research in the university, upload the research outcome to the system, to the market, to the industries. But the industries, are they buying it? A lot of research outcomes are there being wasted. Like you say in Nigeria and in Africa, if you want to hide something for an African or a Nigerian, put it in a book, because we don't read book. So we believe there should be more synergy between research outcomes, industry, and the university, so that industry can be funding university and research outcomes, which some companies are not doing. You know, it's a shame. I don't want to sound depressed, but how can a company be sponsoring Big Brother but cannot fund research? How can a company be playing to the gallery but cannot fund research? So this is a sort of misplaced priorities, and that's why we are lagging behind.
Is that a function? Is that a problem for the corporates? Because the corporates want to make money. So how is research going to give them money? How is research going to give them profits? That shouldn't research be a function of what the government and the institutions such as yours would do themselves?
No. Most of innovations today emanate from the universities, from research outcomes.
So who should be funding this? Who should be funding these research? These research initiatives?
Organizations, industries.
So government doesn't have anything to do with that?
No. It's collaborative effort.
How about the role of the universities themselves?
Yes.
To fund, research initiatives.
Yes.
How about that?
No. The universities were there in terms of conduct and carry out research. There are research funds sent by government, sent by organizations, sent by donor agencies to the universities to fund research, but they are not enough. So what I'm saying is this, that organizations, industries, companies can collaborate with the universities, fund research for their own benefit, and they will make more money. Most of innovations coming out all over the world as a result of collaborative effort and funding by companies, organizations. You see Bill Gates funding so many researches, outcomes. So Nigerian organizations must also collaborate and listen to researchers. We have written to many companies that want to carry out the research on this, which will benefit companies, but many of them are not interested. Some of them are not interested.
Perhaps that's a function of perspective.
Yes.
Well, there is one of these things that has also been said about whether or not maybe the universities themselves, if they have enough resource, they might be able to champion some of these things, and the impact will be felt by these organizations that you're talking about. For instance, NEL Fund, the NEL Fund loan and the new loan scheme that's introduced, for the universities, by the Ministry of Education. How do you see that helping in the capacity development, in the human capital development in the organization, in schools?
Yes. the NEL Fund program should be commended. The NEL Fund program is very, very relevant and important, particularly for Nigerians that would not have the opportunity to be able to go to school and pay for their education. So NEL Fund is a good program. It has to be sustained. But the truth about the NEL Fund program is that it is a program that is going a long way to help people who would ordinarily not be able to pay fees, particularly today. You know, in Nigerian universities, federal universities, we don't pay tuition fee, but there are charges, and those charges have gone up. Many students, more than 50% of students, might not be able to go to the university if not with the help of NEL Fund. So what they can do is to go to the grassroots, communicate to Nigerians to embrace this NEL Fund program, because it should be a good program for them to be.
The issue a number of people are still having with that is sustainability, but perhaps that's a question for the Ministry of Education.
Yes.
Markwe, my colleague in Abuja, has questions for you as well.
Okay.
Go ahead, Markwe.
Well, Professor Obisi, I have to commend your passion on this matter of education. You clearly are very passionate about it. I want to take you up on your own department, more specifically, as with how it regards, with regards to how it concerns issues in town, you know, from the gown to the town. Take a look at, you are a lecturer in the Department of Employment Relations and Human Resource Management. And in recent times, we have seen quite a number of threats to strike actions, not just by Nupeng, which is threatening to go on strike over what is happening in the petroleum industry, but we've also seen threats by ASU, we've seen that by NARD, that's the National Association of Resident Doctors, and a number of others. And I know that as somebody who, you know, focuses on this as an area of study, it must be something that bothers you. What are some of the things that you think we're getting wrong in terms of employee and industrial relations, you know, generally in our country?
Mao, thank you for this relevant question. We need a new mindset in this country. The industrial relations conflict, the employment relations conflict in Nigeria today, they are needless, they are avoidable, they are not necessary. When you say employment relations, when you say industrial relations, you are talking about three parties in a relationship. The workers, represented by the trade union, the employer, represented by the management, and the state, that's the country, represented by the government. These three parties are in a relationship to ensure industrial peace, to ensure industrial harmony. But unfortunately, management must manage, employers must employ, workers must unionize, the government must play its role. For example, the role of a government all over the world should be to be an unbiased umpire. Just like in a football match, you have two teams and you have a referee at the center of the pitch, ensuring that the game of football is played according to rules and regulations. That should be the role of government. But where conflict comes is when government that's supposed to play the role of an unbiased umpire is no longer playing that role. Then conflict is bound to occur. Secondly, when an employer is not playing the role of an employer and wants to unionize, play the role of union, then conflict is bound to occur. And when workers don't want to go about doing their own work, then conflict is bound to occur. In other words, if you live your life and I live my life, there will be no conflict. But conflict will only occur when you want to stop living your own life and to interfere in my own life. That's when conflict will occur. So that's the issue. Even in the country, the problem we are having is when people are not supposed to do what they are supposed to do and trying to interfere in the work of others, conflict is bound to occur. Look at what is happening in the Dangote situation. The Labour Act is very clear. Not only Nigerian Labour Act, but Labour Act all over the world. As a union in the oil sector, we have unionized and non-unionized organizations. The oil sector is a unionized organization. So what is going to happen is that once you're a worker employed in an oil sector, you are free to join a union. You are free not to join a union. Indeed, you can write to the management of the company, I don't want to join this union. Don't deduct my take-off dues and give to them. But no employer has the right to begin to form a union. No. You must allow workers out of their own free will to form a union. However, there are strategies you can use to manage that particular union as an employer. You can employ the strategy they are using in Nigeria, which we call divide and rule or divide and conquer. But you cannot form a union, no, or you instigate to form a union for a particular organization. It is not done anywhere in the world. So the conflict we are having in the oil sector now is avoidable and is unnecessary. See, Nigeria has missed the bus. The train has gone so far, and we don't need to further delay. We need a new mindset. The era of thinking that workers are enemy. No, unions are not enemy. They are partners in progress. There is mutual interest for all. But government should do their own work as an unbiased empire, as a regulatory authority. They should not be biased. Workers should be alive to their duties, to their responsibilities. Union should also do their own bit. As an employer, employer should do its own bit. You know, I'm just worried because the employers in Nigeria has an umbrella body. That's the NECA. And the DG NECA is an expert in industrial relations, in employment relations. If there is any issue concerning employer, that organization like Dangote can pick a call and place a call to their body, that's the Employers Association. But unfortunately, we are not doing what we are supposed to do, and that's where we are having conflict.
Do you see, what solutions do you see to the current impasse between Dangote refineries and Nupeng?
You know, let us adhere to industrial relations, employment relations strategies. What they can do is very simple. Allow the union organize themselves, because the oil sector in Nigeria is a unionized organization. Let them join the union, collaborate with the union, that's the trade union, that's Nupeng, that's Pengasson, that's his senior staff. Collaborate and work harmoniously with them. Because there's something we call casualization. There's something we call outsourcing. There's something we call labor contractor or contract labor. That is what is playing out. Because when you contract out some part of your services to another body, you deny the union of check-off dues that would come to them. And no union will stand idly by and allow that to happen. The truth is that casualization Contract labor. If you go to many organizations in Nigeria, it's deep-rooted and pervasive in this country. You can see an HR manager in an organization. I've been working for a particular organization for 6, 7, 10 years. He or she does not know that he is a casual worker, is a contract worker. What do? Every year, they renew his or her appointment. And that's an unfair labor practice. And that does not augur well for peaceful and sustainable employment relations in the country. What they can do is to move forward, start doing the right thing, start playing the game of employment relations the way it's supposed to be played. Be an employer. Let union do their work. Relate with them. There is no way they are going to shortchange you if you harmoniously work with them.
Back now to Ayo.
Well, thank you, Malkwe. Just one question, and then, we can call this a day. There are those who are saying that the issue that the organized labor is having is because they are going to feel shortchanged. Just as you have said, there are some, you call it check of dues, that goes to the unions. But there are those who are also saying that the unions get some fragments of percentage from every liter of fuel that comes from a particular, from any refinery, even from the importation process. So there's those who believe that it is because of that the unions are crying foul. But then it will seem like it's something that perhaps Dangote Refinery is saying, look, these things, this kind of dues or percentage that is going to the unions is part of the reason that fuel costs are rising.
You see, that may be part of it, but I don't think that's the fundamental issue. The fundamental issue is that what is happening at Dangote between Nupeng, Pengassin is an existential issue. It is about giving the union the freedom to unionize. It's about allowing union to play their role. It is also about allowing an employer to play the role of an employer. That might be a side issue, because if you deplete the membership of a union, because they say that united we stand and divided we fall, it's going to affect the union. So I don't think that might be a side issue, but the principal issue is that workers should be allowed to form a union. But as a union member, you are free to say, I don't want to be a member of a union. So what Dangote can do, which I'm not supposed to make this suggestion, but because as a professional, what they can do, allow them to form a union, which is normal. But after forming a union, you can put up some strategies to manage them, even to your own favor. You recall that when Wabara was the NLC president, this current NLC president had a splinter union. There's a way these things are done, which we can give them advice on how to do this.
Of course, that advice, I'm pretty sure, is going to cost them something, but don't talk about that cost right now. Professor Chris Obisi. Chris Obisi is a lecturer at the Department of Employment Relations and Human Resource Management at the University of Lagos. Thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure. God bless you.
This time around, we're looking at the recent figures released by the National Bureau of Statistics, taking a look at inflation. Month-on-month inflation seems to be decelerating. From what we understand, it's now at 20.12%, down from 21.88% in July, a 1.76% decrease in inflation. So it's still there, but it's just that the rate at which it's climbing is now slower. Well, what does this mean? Are we really seeing the difference? Is this really translating to what we're able to save in the bank accounts? Are we able to save anything in the market space? Well, joining us to discuss this matter this morning is Mr. Paul Alaje, who is an economist. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so very much for having me. A beautiful morning to you, man.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paul Alaje. Well, looking at what we're seeing right now, it does appear that this is some bright news to report. But for a number of Nigerians, they'll still be wondering where exactly is this blue sky that we ought to be looking at. What exactly would you say has contributed to the decrease that we're currently seeing in inflation rate?
Thank you once again. I think stability of exchange rates is one of the major contributors to the current inflation rate that we have seen. Inflation has ceased from what it used to be as of the July inflation number, which was 21.88%. As we speak now, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, it eased to 20.12%. What seems to be consistent, according to the Bureau of Statistics, is that food inflation has eased. We have also seen month-on-month inflation is now around 0.74%. So Bureau of Statistics is saying that rural inflation eased, urban inflation also eased. So what the report is saying is that the rate of increase in prices has reduced. That is the rate of increase. That is, it's still increasing, but the rate at which it increases has reduced. It's not increasing the way it increased this time last year. So as we speak, from the Bureau of Statistics report, inflation number has now reduced. It has reduced in its increase to 20.12% year on year.
Indeed. I mean, you've mentioned forex stability, and we also understand that the harvest season is contributing to the stability that we're currently witnessing. But how is that really translating for the ordinary Nigerian? Because for them, it does appear that every time they go to the market, apart from a few items, quite a number of things still seem to be on the increase.
Well, a number of factors here. We can look at cost of living and household consumption. Food inflation, if you look at it, according to Bureau of Statistics, is one of the things that is relatively, and the accounts they are looking at is rice and local grain. I have seen in the media that I've been informed that price of rice is 50,000 naira per bag. Well, I don't know what that person is saying, but to leave politics out of this, there might have been relative reduction in some food items, but not in the volume that some persons have mentioned it in the media. That may have some political coloration. So, but generally, household item is still quite high. And that is why inflation is not saying that food inflation is a single digit. It's still a double digit, which is still relatively high, but it's an improved inflation number compared to what Bureau of Statistics reported. But there is a mix I would discuss if I have time. Then you can also see that there is slight reduction in rural urban inflation, even though rural inflation remains relatively higher than urban inflation for the year reported by Bureau of Statistics. You can also check what the impact will be. The impact on social and political implication. People, most Nigerians may be saying all these conversations that economists are having in local language in this part of the country, they may call it Dogon Turunchi. That's BB grammar. That's what you people are saying, because there seems to be that disconnect from what they thought it would be and what they are seeing right now. But you see, when inflation numbers are reported, if government persists in making the environment relatively easy for people, then people will start feeling the impact. But the immediate, the impact may not be felt. And you can also see that in the coming period, monetary policy may respond. What will be the response of monetary policy? What many have been advocating for is reduce the rate. 27.5% of MPR is high. So bring the rate down. That is what many people, in fact, many economists are also saying that. But what I need many to understand, I support rate reduction. However, we have to do this with a lot of caution. What is the caution? It's too early to start celebrating reduced inflation, even though it's fifth consecutive reduction. But what we need to understand that what is the beginning of this reduction? It is base year adjustment and basket adjustment to 10% off from inflation numbers from 34 to 24%. That in itself was not a natural reduction. However, from that adjustment, we saw one increase or two, and after which we have seen consistent reduction now for about 5 months. Because of that, monetary authority, even if wants to reduce, must be cautious. And my advice is wait until you see year on year. And if you are not going to wait until you see year on year, you might need to be very, very careful in the kind of reduction that we will see. If reduction is sporadic, we might see inflation rebound, and it might go back to even a much higher inflation. Why? Because central bank is trying to control money supply in the system. And I have said that money supply is not the only major factor that drives inflation. And for those that may not know, beyond economic theory, factors that are monetary factors that are driving inflation, there are non-monetary factors that are driving inflation. Central bank is trying to manage all monetary factors, but non-monetary factors that are driving inflation are also as significant. And we need to be careful, because pre-election year always for Nigeria economy with high liquidity. Who are the drivers of this liquidity? Unfortunately and sadly, it's not going to be market players, it's going to be politicians.
Indeed. So you are not in support of a reduction in MPR as we currently speak. You think that there needs to be a lot of caution exercised in that regard. But for a number of people, they would like to see this trend continue, this trend in the reduction of inflation numbers. What do you think needs to happen for us to continue to consistently see this decline in inflation increase?
A number of things we need to combat insecurity, especially in food producing zones, so that food inflation can continue to have impact on headline in overall inflation or headline inflation. When food inflation reduces significantly, we will all feel the effect. Why? Because food inflation is the main driver of headline inflation in Nigeria. Number two, we also need to ensure that we slow down on imports, support local manufacturers to produce things that can be readily available in Nigeria, and we also patronize the same. Thirdly, exchange rate is a major key factor when it comes to currency. Central bank has since reverted to manage flows, and we are seeing the impact. I remember that I had a conversation, I think, with your colleague on our earlier show 2 years ago, and when I was asked what was my recommendation regarding what government should do, and I said, see, we must go back to managed loan, not in the manner it was done in the previous administration, but in a different manner. And I'm happy that that managed loan is what we are seeing today. We are able to cover our 10-month import cover to assure that, which means we can have this exchange rate being consistent around 1,500 to 1,600. That range is still manageable. In the parallel market is around 1,520, 1,530, which is still really manageable until we can do more action and bring this down. So food inflation is very key for us to manage. The exchange rate is also a key factor, ensuring we have local manufacturing. All of these that I've said, they are momentary solutions. They are temporal solutions. The real solution will come when we're able to generate a larger proportion of electricity. And we are not just saying we want energy because we just want to see bulb come up, but we are able to convert this to industrial capacity. Some nations, when they see 6% inflation, they are already in problem. Nigeria is able to cope with 18-20% inflation. Why? Because manufacturing sector is immortal. We need to move away from a nation that depends so highly on imports to a nation that is able to produce and give what it has produced to the rest of the world. And I think this is how Nigeria will go going forward. Now that we're having a lot of signs of market or pure market system, in our economy. In the last 2 years, the size of high pure market economy indices are very high, higher than I've seen in recent history in Nigeria. But what we must also do to make this pure market system work is that the work component of pure market is manufacturing, is production, is high level of interdependency and sovereignty. In terms of economic sovereignty is what Nigeria must embrace. And I hope that we'll see this in the coming period. So to really solve this problem and not to find ourselves back in the wilderness of Egypt anytime soon, it will be to deliberately formulate policy and see this policy through for production, for manufacturing, and certainly growth in Nigeria.
Well, I know Ayo has questions for you. Ayo.
Thank you, Markwe. You know, I'm going to revolve around the same issue, Mr. Alaje. And forgive me, for the longest time, it has bothered me that a significant chunk or percentage of inflation rate in Nigeria is due to the exchange rate. And it's a little, you know, burdensome, and it's concerning. I don't know if you want to educate us on how significant the impact is. You've listed two major things. You've listed inflation, the exchange rate as a significant factor. You've listed food inflation as a significant factor, which is, of course, perhaps a subject of infrastructure and all. You've also listed the issue of energy availability. Now, how can we escape this inflation rate in our country being influenced by exchange rate? Will it help if we're able to ramp up production and exports? And what's holding us down from doing that?
If I hear your question, because when you started, I really didn't hear so much of what you were saying. But it's like I heard when you mentioned the impact of exchange rate and infrastructure. I don't know if I'm correct.
Well, if you can hear me better now, I'm concerned that inflation rate in our country is influenced largely by the exchange rate. Can we escape that?
Exactly.
So, one, how? Secondly, is it a function of production and export? If those are the factors, what's holding us down from ramping up production and export?
Thank you. You asked a very lovely question, and I think you partly answered your own question. Inflation is largely driven by exchange rate, and it's not just Nigeria. It's a reality for nations that are not producing enough. You can even see your exports is higher than your import. We now ask, what are you exporting? What are we exporting largely? We heard that we're exporting some non-oil items, and we're exporting crude oil. But please, I would want many of us to pick the trade report from the National Bureau of Statistics. That is where the real gist is. Nigeria still imports, I think as of 2 years ago, as much as nearly ₦1 trillion for antibiotics. Not for everything, just antibiotics. You know, as high as 1 trillion naira. That is what we.
Oh dear. Well, I'm hoping that we'll have Mr. Alaje back, because that is, you know, if inflation is largely driven by exchange rate to the naira, the dollar to the naira, is there a chance that we can benchmark our economy against another currency? That's one. Secondly, what's the role for states in all of this conversation we're having? Is there a place? Mr. Alaje, are you back with us?
I am fully back with you. I'm so sorry. I think the network had an issue. So
I think you have significantly answered that question. So two things again. Number one, is it a problem that we benchmark only against the dollar as against perhaps even the yen that we try to have a kind of currency swap with over time? The second question I'd like to ask you is there a place for states? Because most of the time when we're talking about all this inflation rate and all, we're talking only about the activities of the federal government. Is there something the states themselves can do to help, to ameliorate, to reduce this inflation rate themselves? If the states are able to, as you said, increase energy supply through electricity supply in the states and ramp up production, particularly agricultural products in their states, maybe we can produce more, reduce food inflation, and then we'll have a slower, if not eradicate totally, the inflation rate. What are your thoughts?
That's a major role to play. I don't want to say most of the roles to play, because most of the people are in states. And what they need to do is to ensure we have high agro output. Another thing they must do is to ensure that we connect our various farms, farm settlement, farm areas to consumption or market centers. That will really help. Why? Because one of the factors driving inflation really high is when farmers have output, how will they convey this to the markets? Because where Bureau of Statistics is picking the numbers from, that's the survey from, is not from the farms, is actually from the market. So the cost of transport is really high from farm to the market. But when we have alternative, and that is why I think, and I've continued to advocate that different states needs to partner with the Nigeria Railway Corporation to help them, in making rail connection viable in their place. I've been to a number of interesting states, and I think that the federal government will need to also play a role from the north central to southeast to southwest to northeast to northwest. We need to see that as something very important. If we don't, we're still going to have high inflation. Recall that anytime there is a global shock, the impact on Nigeria is really high. Why? Because our dependency on global economy is really high. So we must create a relatively independent, not absolutely independent, but relatively independent domestic economy that can help us as a nation to and protect us out of global economic shocks. So I think state has key role to play beyond just allocation and paying salaries, but in terms of infrastructure and creating environment for output and production to grow. If we don't, I'm sorry, it's a matter of time, inflation may rebound again.
Well, we hope that would not be very soon, especially given the fact that states are now getting more money. Just yesterday, we understand that from the FAC, over 2 trillion naira was shared between the federal government and states. Revenue hitting as much as 2 trillion naira, the first in a very long time. So yesterday was also a historic date in terms of allocations being given to state. But we have to thank you very much for sharing your thoughts this morning with us. Mr. Paul Alaje is an economist. Thank you once more.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Oh, we take, no, we're not taking any break. We're closing. We've come to the end of the program. We have to thank you so much for being a part of it this morning. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogunsu.
Well, it's a little enviable, Maokwe, that you talked about 2 trillion naira being shared by the states. Okay, I'm waiting to feel it in my state. Amayo Makinde, enjoy the rest of your day. By the way, Business Morning is on the hour.